We use incentives and sanctions based on best practices. So we have sort of a guideline of what we should and shouldn't use, what's best for the participant. I try to, and I think as a team, we try to balance the use of incentives and sanctions, because it's easy to say you missed this and you missed that and then forget, oh, this is what you did well. So there is a lot of verbal praise and good job and congratulations when they've done something good, or even something hard, even something like just going to meetings every week. For some people, that's really hard. So just let them know, hey, you've done a really good job and we've noticed.
Incentives are to give a little acknowledgement when appropriate for the work a client has put into the program. The clients work incredibly hard, and this is a huge life change to be part of this program. The program isn't necessarily about rewarding good behavior, but it's certainly a way to encourage people to keep doing that sort of thing. And hopefully a client is not doing it simply for those little rewards. There are gift cards to maybe the zoo or movie passes or gas pass, things like that. But it's an acknowledgement that the client has done something exceptional, and all this work is exceptional, and the real reward will certainly be the client's sobriety and health, but this is one way to acknowledge that frequently.
So the incentives that we use in Healing to Wellness include praise, verbal praise. We have gift cards. We allow participants to either skip a court hearing, like a court session, or an office visit at their choosing. We may give them credit for a certain amount of community service if they do a certain thing, or maybe we could switch something, like they would like to do this and it's beneficial for them, so they can skip that. So trade-offs. We allow them to travel if they don't have any, if there are no pending issues. Their travel is more flexible.
How I felt when I received incentives from the court was a rewarding feeling for me, reassuring me that I was doing my part into complying with everything that was being asked. It gave you this feeling of like you're doing really good, and just share it with everybody. And you know, people are having bad days, but and especially yourself, when trying to recover from drugs and alcohol, you know, it's really every feeling that you feel, it's just like, oh man, I got to share this good feeling with this next person.
Sanctions are important to keep the client honest in a certain way, to make sure they know that while we're here to help and the court is here to encourage them and support them, they have to be honest. They can't lie about use of any substances, and if they are caught, and they probably will be caught, then there will be a consequence for that. And it's certainly not going to automatically be jail. In fact, jail is a sanction no one wants to use, and very few people think it's useful for anything. But the client also needs to understand that we're putting our trust in them and they're putting our trust in us, and we want to show that either by rewarding them or by showing that they can't be dishonest.
So some of the sanctions we use are maybe putting them on a SCRAM bracelet or having them use a SoberLink device, community service hours, things like that to help get them back on track. And we do talk to them about that and why we're giving them a sanction. We try to be fair and understanding and listen to what the situation is. But when the participants first come into the program in phase 1, we're expecting them to relapse, and we know they're going to relapse. And so we're trying to work with them, and we know that that's going to happen. So we're expecting that to happen. And they'll be put on a color system as well, where they have to call in every day, and when their color comes up, then they have to be tested and they have to report to have a test done. So that's just kind of a regular process for our program. And the individuals that come in on the first phase, they're monitored more closely, and as the phases go on, then it's less monitoring.
The overall philosophy for the use of incarceration in our Healing to Wellness program is that we generally tend to avoid using it as a sanction. One of the main reasons the Healing to Wellness program was developed was to avoid incarceration. So if we find that we're constantly using jail time as a sanction, it negates the purpose of having the program.
Our sanctions are set up for our participants so that they understand what the sanction is for by a conversation. Initially, the probation officer is going to be the first line of contact with that participant to say, hey, you missed this, or hey, you forgot to do that. And so reiterating what we expect of them is important. The conversation as to why it happened, what did you do differently? What was going on at this time that this happened? Trying to find out the mechanism to how we got to this sanction, and then trying to figure out a way that we can change that.
I deal with non-compliance issues, primarily speaking with the participant, finding out from the participant exactly what happened and to get their side of the story. I gather the information from any other source that I need to make sure that I have all the facts of what happened first, get everybody's point of view, everybody's feedback, and then from there inform the team of what's going on, making sure that I have all the information first before providing this issue to the team.
What we've learned about the application of incentives and sanctions is that we do need to have something that applies to all participants. However, the problem with that is that all participants are different. And so while we may have a set guidelines as to what incentives we give to people for completing certain parts of the program or for doing extra work may be the same, the sanction portion actually can vary a lot. And so even if we develop guidelines, sometimes we have to deviate from those just depending on the needs of the participant and the history of the participant and how the participant is doing in the program. And so once we learn that about an individual, we use that to craft good incentives and sanctions. So sometimes if we know an individual is really strapped for time because they have 3 or 4 kids and then they're married, we may, as an incentive, if they're doing well in the program, excuse them from one probation meeting or from one Healing to Wellness session, depending on how far along they are in the program, because that gives that time back to them. And we communicate also to them that we understand that their time's valuable and that we appreciate that they're actually taking the time to go through the program to work on these issues rather than just choosing the other option, which would be jail. So that's kind of how we use their life experiences to deal with compliance and non-compliance.